Yeah. Right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
It's just pushing it right from the beginning.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, Brian's kind of back, and Dennis is just...
Yeah, this song's awesome. Just rocking out.
They were great. I mean, they were a great rock and roll band. Basically a garage band that just practiced themselves into this.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to the In My Beach Boys Room podcast. I am Adam Schreiner, sitting here with Matthew Hartz, and today we are going to talk about the Beach Boys concert album, following the chronological order. If you want to follow Matthew on Instagram, Matthew Hartz Music is his Instagram, and then Facebook, you just look up Matthew Hartz. You'll see him with a banjo in his hand, and you got a cool new cover photo of you playing with the...
Asleep at the Wheel, and then we were with the East Texas Symphony Orchestra in Tyler, Texas last
pretty
couple weekends
impressive
ago.
Picture. So if you want to hop over to Facebook and see that picture, it's pretty cool of him with the orchestra behind him playing.
Yeah, and... Well, and is that all of our social media?
Yeah, we're pretty basic.
I wanted to take this opportunity, because I've been wanting to do this, I've had the exciting opportunity to meet some of our Beach Boy podcast fans out on the road. I want to make a special mention of Bill Kaprosky from Maryland.
Nice.
Give him a shout out, and Miss Cheryl Barnett from Pittsburgh. She's, man, such a sweet ray of sunshine she is, and also, I want to mention Robbie Long. I didn't meet him out on the road, but he's done some really, really neat drawings he's obviously a very talented artist and many other things, but I really appreciate what he's done. And,
his art's cool, and we'll throw it up. We'll give a little
and he's
sample,
given us some shout outs, and I just wanted to give him one back too.
Yeah, and just so you know, for those of you that don't know, little perspective is we're in Boise, Idaho. So when these people have found Matthew on the road with Asleep at the Wheel in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, or in Philadelphia,
you know, and then someone who was from Maryland, that's literally across the country. So super cool, very grateful, and also like we've said, go see him. Make sure if you see him while he's out on tour with Asleep at the Wheel, that you come and say hello. Because whenever he calls me from the road, he's like, "Hey, I got one came and saw me." So really cool with that. I guess the other thing, real quick, like and subscribe to the show if you like it. Hit the little bell notification. That helps with the algorithm. And every time we see all your comments, we love them. We love it when you guys just give us the feedback, when you give us your opinion. We love it. That's what's cool about the Beach Boys, is how they've touched so many different people and how people have interpreted their own things, because you get to sit here and listen to his musical interpretation and how it hit him, and then my casual interpretation. That's the whole point of the podcast is Matthew teaching me and showing me all these little intricacies of the Beach Boys, not just that little 12-song album that I listened to as a kid, the little Greatest Surfer Tunes that only had 3
greatest
songs.
hits.
Yeah.
It was the Greatest Hits album.
But anyway, that's the housekeeping stuff for today. Keep it nice and short for you. I am very curious about this Beach Boys concert album, just because we've been all these other albums, we have new music on them and stuff like that, and you've been picking up the guitar and showing us stuff, but that's not the case, and you were kind of making mention that to me before we started, and so I'll let you take it. I'm curious kind of where this is going to go. I obviously did my homework, listened, I have my notes on the songs, but let's see. I'll let you take it from here, and we'll see where this thing goes.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. I think we had talked about trying to do the Christmas episode today too, and I got in touch with you over the weekend and said, hey, there's a lot to talk about here, and I didn't really foresee it that way. But let's talk about, first of all, it was released on October 19th, 1964. Okay, so That's not too long, it's just in the fall. I think all summer long was July.
And is that, sorry to interject here, but does that have to do with the theme of the colors of the album, or is that separate?
Let me get into that.
See, I didn't know if I was jumping the gun or not.
I'm kind of, yeah.
Okay,
okay, now let's talk about, because we're going to get there. This was their first #1 album. It went to #1. It stayed there for 4 weeks, and it was on the Billboard charts for over a year, 62 weeks.
This was their first #1 album.
First #1 album.
Interesting.
Surfing USA had gone to #2, and Summer Days after in 65 goes to #2. But those are their, so this and actually Endless Summer, the compilation from 74, are the only 2 #1 albums that the Beach Boys have ever had.
Oh.
So this is, and it's also the one of the 3 that my mom had, and we'll get there. But this, I found out another cool thing about this album. It was the first live album to ever top the charts.
Wow.
Think about that.
Okay.
Of any act.
Yeah. No, that's pretty crazy. And I started to think, I wonder how many live albums since have done that.
Well, I don't know about that, but I don't even know how many live albums had been recorded so much at that point. There had been a few things within the jazz realm, but it surprised me that there wasn't something like that in there that was there before
prior,
that. And
right.
maybe there's more to it than that, but I know that that's a little nugget out there about that record,
okay,
so
cool.
that I didn't really know.
Sure.
I also want to talk about the fact that this is done in Sacramento. It was actually, and I'm going to hold up, I've got several copies of this album, but in the very, very back, there's the auditorium with the kids outside of it where the concert was held.
Okay.
These concerts were put together by a young kid about their age named Fred Vail. They had met him in 1963, and Sacramento was one of the first places the Beach Boys went really big.
Okay.
And so that's why this location was chosen for the live album, and their connection to Fred, and because they had a really passionate following in Sacramento and thought they could get, obviously a good crowd response. Okay. This is not just one concert. Some people think it could be even 3, it could be as many as 5 performances that this was culled from.
Oh.
But the two main ones that, and it's, I think that it's been pretty much ascertained that it's there's 2 days and 3 shows that the album was taken from. December 21st, 1963. So okay. Clear back, a year before, almost a year before. Yeah. And then on August 1st of 64, they did 2 shows then they were all at the same venue, right? And so
all the same venue, but different times.
Different show. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then on August 30th in 1964, it's documented that they were in Western Recorders to do some vocal sweetening, which now we're going to get right into telling you about the fact that this is one heavily doctored album.
Is it?
Oh, yes. Almost everything on the album is re-sung in the studio. And even some of the dialogue that goes on between the songs was redone in the studio.
I feel like I've been lied to. Okay,
this is every live album that ever comes out. Really, a lot of this happens too.
Sure,
and some
but
of the most famous ones.
I guess for me, one of the things is that I'm thinking is like, back in this day, they're at this time, the music is they have to do it live, one shot, one take. I guess I don't realize that they have that at this point they do have the technology to
take some live recordings in, and we're going to get to. I'm hopefully we're going to address this a few times, and it'll kind of answer your questions as we go along. So you got that element that they almost everything, because there's a little bit that is actually completely live, and then the dialogue. However, most of the music Most of the actual music is just, them at the performances. And it includes it because there's mistakes in there that were kept and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, and that was one of my questions.
And it is Brian on the bass, and Carl on the guitar, lead guitar, and then Al on rhythm guitar, and Dennis on drums, and Mike on a little bit of sax every once in a while. But it is them. And so that's live. And the other thing that's live is the screaming.
Yeah, sure.
In the, and just so, I thought that was funny when I read that, is that the playing and the screaming were loud. And that's a lot of the reason that they had to go back and fix or re-record the vocals, is because the vocals were drowned out by the screaming.
Sure. Yeah. That makes sense.
But there were some things where things were sour, and there's a lot of there's a lot of outtakes from concerts from this era, and even these concerts themselves, that are not doctored at all. And you're going to go, oh yeah, I can see where that's not quite as perfect. It doesn't sound maybe as polished as what's on the concert album, but it's still dang good.
Sure. I know that they have released some of with these box sets and stuff like that, some the originals. Do those exist of these originals?
Yep.
Where you could actually listen to
there's quite a bit just from these. And there's actually, they have an official release called Sacramento 1964 that I think has everything they did at every one of those shows.
That you can now, Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
So that's cool. I do want to talk about the lineup again. We just did talk about the lineup. There's one tune where that lineup changes up, but I do want to say, this is the Beach Boys, and they're young, budding musicians, but it's got a great, exciting groove all the way through, and Brian and Dennis working together as, the underpinning of the rhythm section is really fun to listen to, and Dennis's exuberance as a drummer, kind of pushing it a lot in some places, and Brian having to throttle him back, and it's really fun to really get that into perspective. Wow, this is the Beach Boys, and they're kicking ass on this stuff, as a live band. There's no augmenting musicians in there. There's no other extra keyboard players, or how as the band they got older and the live band progressed, they started adding people and augmenting musicians and but this is just kind of just the basic garage band unit. Totally. But I have to mention my outfit today. I put on the old Wilson Project.
I'm glad you did. When I walked in and saw you had that, I'm like, perfect. There you go. That's only been hanging in episodes. We actually found a reason for you to put it on.
Yeah, and that brings me to the fact that this was a hugely important album for me, because it was one of Mom's 3, but this is the one that captivated me visually. And I've talked before in the episodes of how Mom used to give me tracing paper, and I'd trace the front cover. I don't know how many times I did that, but this thing also came originally with this booklet, and my original copy, of course, had all this. And I remember this is a day where I'd really decided I want to learn more about the Beach Boys. And so I was really asking Mom, and on our original copy, there's names on this particular picture right here, because Mom helped me name the one she thought she knew at that point, because she didn't really know,
Sure,
and then I remember, when Dad gets home from work, we're going to ask him if he knows who. And so I remember Dad coming home and sitting down, and he didn't, but everybody kind of guessed at it. And I remember that being a first moment of me of being like a 3 or 4 year old child, of really being curious of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these guys?
Yeah.
And so the colors, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's noticed it before, but the concert wall that I call this behind me is obviously based on this. And I actually took color samples from the original album and went down and to make my orange and yellow dots.
I'm going to do something I never do, and I'm going to actually adjust this camera so they can see the whole thing. So he's got the orange dots on the top.
Yeah,
there.
and I don't know if anybody has made the connection. You know, I looked at the back of this so much, and these dots are basically burned in my brain. But when I start this, before this thing was going to be a museum, it was just this wall, and I kept seeing this wall because when I was a little kid, I dreamed of owning all of those instruments, and those are all American standards. The one in the middle is a '62 reissued Jag, just like the one Carl played. It's about 25 years old now. The Strat and the P bass are newer, but they're as close as I could get to them for being, you know, the famous all white Olympic instruments that they play on the front of it. And so I could get really nerdy about all that stuff, you know. But this album wasn't really, I don't think it was really musically inspiring, especially after I came to know about the Beach Boys, but visually it was them to me.
Sure.
You know, it was like the first things, you know, them in action. And then I know we have that one picture of John hanging off Dad's crutches.
Uh-huh.
And this is the one I'm holding that open for everybody to see. I think I was 5 at the time, but that was like the spirit of that photograph is, oh, we're going to take a picture. Let me go get something that's really important to me to show everybody.
Yeah, totally.
You know, so it really, this thing runs deep for me, and it's way, way down there.
Yeah.
So now we can get into talking about the music.
Okay, so now let's
or whatever, if you have questions about any of that.
You've kind of, I'm gonna go. I had questions that you actually did answer in that introduction to this album. One was, were there a lot of flubs and mistakes in the performance? And you said, you know, maybe not a lot, but there were some.
There are some that are even still on there
that are left in there. The other was the screaming. Was a notable aspect of the album, especially on what was it, In My Room, where it's like this kind of softer song, and you have these just screams.
I noticed. I was paying particular attention to that today,
where it's like not necessarily, and it reminds me of stuff that, you know, clips you would see of, like, you know, of these you know, early pop stars back, you know, just making girls go crazy, you know, all the videos getting them mobbing the car that they're in, and that's what it reminds me. They can't help themselves but just, you know, scream when they're watching their you know, these stars play this music.
Yeah, I mentioned Fred Vale, the guy that got them there, and he was about their age, and it was his idea for this live concert thing. And Brian and Murray was still kind of in there at this point of being part of the, you know, the structure of everything, and they couldn't really see it. You know, why would, you know? And and it was Fred Vale's thing was, no, they want to. This is like a souvenir from coming to see the show.
Yeah.
You know, this is a remembrance of that and everything. And so then Brian got on board and started, you know, and so it was. I don't know if that makes any sense or lines up with what you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess one thing that I guess the screaming it does is there's a nice little time capsule aspect of what was going on with, you know, I get, you know, the Beatles and Beach Boys at this time, where they are these huge pop stars, and girls are going nuts, don't even know what to do with themselves, you know. So
yeah, it's funny. You know, have we talked about the fact that Murray used to go around and brag that you know, when the Beach Boys got done playing someplace, that the theaters would have to recover the seats because the girls had peed all over them.
Well, it sounds like that's what they're doing in this album.
And I think Fred Vale also wanted to capture that element of everything. God, he's like, this is lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Let's get it on here. And so Brian, it's so cool because it's Fred Vale that does this announcement. And it still gives me chills and now from Hawthorne, California, to entertain you tonight with a gala concert and a recording session, the fabulous. Yeah. Now, I didn't know when I was a kid that there was a word edited out of that. This is taken from the December 21st 1963 concert, and he says a gala Christmas concert or a holiday concert. And so Brian got with him and said, hey, we're going to use this, but we're just going to cut Christmas out of it, and we're going to use the one from this. Another thing I forgot to say about the December 21st, 1963 show, Carl Wilson's 17th birthday.
Oh, that's right. These are teenagers. So real quick, is this, how long does the blue striped shirt, does that continue on past this?
Just, they're wearing the striped shirts on into 66.
Okay.
So another year and a half, I know, all through 65. And then like on the Pet Sounds tour, they're even still wearing striped shirts, but they're about to go away.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. I didn't know if this was kind of the end or the fade out of that, or if we still have years of the striped shirt era, I guess. But yes,
just a couple.
Just a couple more. Okay.
Yep.
I guess one thing that I don't know why. There was a part I was a little shocked that there was about half and half covers and theirs. That was a little shocking to me. I understand having covers, obviously, but the fact that it was half and half, and maybe that's because I'm looking at it from a lens of the Beach Boy, looking back on these albums now and what a lot of these songs, what they ended up becoming, and maybe at the time they weren't, what they ended up becoming. I don't know, but I was a little shocked that
I've got an answer for you on that.
Okay.
The Beach Boys, when they started playing live shows in the early days, were playing like sock hops. So they're playing long dances. And so they knew a bunch of cover songs. But they also these were cover tunes that they played a lot because they really liked them. And there's some strange things as we get to each one of them. I'll talk about them a little bit more, but these were not things that these were regular parts of their show. That being said, a rock and roll show in the early 1960s was not what it would become. And lots of acts put their shows on exactly like this.
The same way.
Yes. And so it was kind of a format. It was almost kind of we didn't really know what was expected at a rock and roll show, so we'll play some other popular stuff of the day.
Sure.
At that point. Now,
right.
Once we get to the in-concert record from 73, there's none of that. You know what I mean? Because I think it's really a transformation of what a show was in the early 60s as opposed to what it would be 10 years later.
Right. Okay.
Does that make any sense?
100%.
And it was entertaining people. When we get to Long Tall Texan especially, we talk about it's kind of, some of the stuff is a connection with the audience sort of a thing, and audience participation.
Sure.
And,
Well, and I think that not only the covers being that they did so many covers, but the fact that they did covers that I had never heard them do before, so it was similar, I guess, in format to some of their other albums where they were doing covers that I had never heard their version of, so it does fit with the theme of the previous albums. But that was just something that was just like, oh wow, I didn't expect that. So
no,
I think with that being
observation.
Said, we can jump into fun. I love this. I thought it was a great live performance. My only note on this one was there something at the end that is messed up at the end?
No. Well, first of all, there's 2 songs on here. Are you ready for this? That weren't even performed. Or I think maybe Fun was, but it's the studio track minus some instruments. So you don't really know
so
until
that's why I thought it was so great.
It's the studio track, and then they sing over and they just, that's a studio recreation. Then what always screwed me up, this is the first fun I ever heard. The damn thing is sped up like a half step. So the voices seem extra high, and Brian's falsetto at the end is just way. So when I heard the real studio fun, which was, brought down to the regular pitch, it's like that was another disorienting thing for me as a child, but what happened with the concert thing, and it's just a marketing thing to make them sound a little bit younger, a little bit more energetic. Let's pump it up a little bit and make their voices just even a little bit higher.
Yeah. So, okay. So 2 things now that you've said that. One is that another thing on the album overall, I felt, and you did kind of mention this earlier, the album overall felt like higher, like sped up a little bit. Like a lot of the songs felt like they were played faster.
That's probably, this is the only example of pitch of them actually physically taking a machine and speeding it up, the tape. But the reason that is because of Dennis's pretty frenetic drumming.
And that was where I noticed
it. He pushes the beat a lot because he's just excited. And
so that that is an accurate feeling, is that it does feel like,
absolutely
like it's a little faster. And then the other thing, so you said that, so what is live in Fun?
I don't think much of anything.
Nothing. Because there's at the end, and maybe it was when I was listening to it. It isn't at the end kind of a weird drum thing.
I think that there's a weird edit on the end.
Because that's kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah, I think that they did something to. I know what you're talking about. But man, good student, isn't he, guys?
Well, I mean, I feel like you set me up though, because you said that you didn't say that they did that, but you said they did it twice, so it happens again.
It does happen again where it is not the
Okay, so the little old lady from Pasadena. Where did this song come from? Is this a cover?
This is a cover, but oddly enough, this is a current. This is another crazy aspect of the set list of the show. This was a current hit of Jan and Dean's that was at its highest chart position on the day that this was recorded. So the Beach Boys they're Jan and Dean's friends, and Brian's working with them. You'd think if Brian's going to cover a Jan and Dean tune, he'd at least pick one that he wrote, because he had wrote Surf City and a bunch of others. And I know that he always liked Little Old Lady from Pasadena, but for me, it's the ultimate no ego thing from Brian. Is it's like, we just really like this tune. And so it's odd that they cover kind of a competitor at the same time. And it's their song it's at their song, and it's at its highest chart position, and the Beach Boys are playing it in a concert.
Yeah, that's. Well,
and people think
smart on one end.
People think Little Old Lady from Pasadena is a Beach Boys tune. If most people, when they hear it, they think Jan and Dean and the Beach Boys are kind of the same thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I like the bass line in this song. I think it's a cool bass line. I know it's kind of a walking bass line, maybe.
Oh yeah, Brian is just. It's driving, and Carl's guitar solo is super crisp it drives.
Little Deuce Coupe. Okay, so now I'm nervous to say things, but so the only thing that they did a good job. If they're faking me out again, with it just sounds more primal to me, like more raw. That was just, and I guess that's kind of that live feel. But that's, the only thing I really wrote down about this one was that. Yeah, it just seemed a little more. It seemed live. It seemed raw. It seemed primal.
I think they resung it for sure. Yeah. But the music and I'm not sure about the dialogue. This was a standard piece of dialogue that Mike was doing at the time to say, "Hey, this is how we make records." In the beginning, and this introduction, I have to admit, man, when I was a little kid, this did a lot to, this is my first information about maybe what these guys' roles and personalities are, even though you don't get that much of it. It's this, hey, here's Denny on the drums. Al with the rhythm guitar comes in. Then Carl with the lead guitar. Then Brian fills it all in with the bass. And then we step up to the mics, and it comes out something like this. And I'm not sure if they redid that in the studio, but that was something that they were doing on stage as a regular part of the show to introduce Little Deuce Coupe.
Okay, and when I step up to the mic and it comes out a little something, or we step up to the mic and comes out a little something like this, did they coin this? Because I've heard this. Like when I heard that, I was like, oh, I wonder if they were the original, if they're the origin of that, because I've heard that other people do that and say that, and I don't know if it's just something that they're saying or if they actually got it from, Michael.
Maybe it's pretty kind of a common saying,
thing,
maybe,
common say, maybe. But I guess maybe, if we hadn't really heard people do it before this, then maybe this is whether they know it or not, this was the original person to do that, original band to do that.
It sold, the album sold a lot of units, and so it could have that kind of influence.
Yeah.
On that, I think that the shuffle it's that shuffle beat, and it's really interesting listening to Dennis's snare drum playing on this, and Brian chugging along with him. It was just, like it just wasn't something that was done in pop music a lot. And so even more than that, they had to, they're taking it out of the studio and putting it on a stage and doing something live that, is a different feeling pop song and still making it rock, what I mean? It's just more of their organic nature, I think.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's it. That's all I got on that one. We keep going. Long Tall Texan, which you said is a cover, and this is a great song. I never heard this song before, so this is... Yeah. I thought it was a fantastic song.
1959 is when it was written and I think first recorded, but there was a guy named Murray Kellum that had a hit with it in 1963 that's pretty close to the way the Beach Boys do it. So here again is another thing that's a current hit that the Beach Boys are covering, and so it's like they're saying, "Hey, we're playing other people's current hits." Maybe that, but I think more of it is an homage to, this is something we really like, and we think it's hip, so we're going to do it, or, the cowboy element in the Beach Boys early on, it is, it's a whole funny thing. And Mike uses it as almost a comic piece in some of his vocal stuff that he's doing, and he never quite finishes the lines. And then there's, at the end, he's on the sax and Brian's on the bass, and they just play this, it's just nonsensical. And then, and I think they did that every time they'd play this song. So it was kind of rehearsed. And then I've got on there that Dennis is pushing quite a bit, but Brian's bass playing is really neat on this. This is another one. Boom, 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 boom. Just some really cool lines in it, and some rhythmic things that Brian does on the bass in this one that I like a lot. But it's a fun song.
Yeah, it's cool.
We'd always do it in the Wilson Project, and John killed with it.
Oh, nice. Nice. In My Room. This is another great one. Did they pull from this? Is this the other one they pulled from?
No, because
I actually really like this live performance.
Yeah,
and this notably the Fun, and In My Room. I really liked the live performances on those. Right. So I didn't know if the two that I liked were the ones that got pulled. But
no, they redid the vocals. They redid the vocals, but no, this is it. You got to, other than just there's two tunes where they're not playing the instruments and they're using a recorded track. Right, it wasn't even done at the concert.
Sure, yeah. But it was.
But this was done there, and there's some of the stuff that I think some of the singing is on there. But I've got, it's just beautiful. This is the first In My Room I heard, and I remember this is one when I heard the studio In My Room, I'm like going, wow, that kind of, pretty much sounds like In My Room, the one that, because they did a really great job of recreating it. And there's talk about mistakes in the end of the bridge. Brian's got it. He's like a half step off for like at least a measure, or and finally corrects it. But so they weren't trying to fix every last bad thing on the record, what I mean? I think they wanted it to sound like a good live record, and so they knew that was going to be part of the deal, is hey, people are going to expect some stuff on here. But Brian's falsetto on the end, that last room, it just soars. I mean, it's like a highlight of me for this record. I think
that moment right there.
Yeah, and just the song, the way they perform it is so good.
Yeah, this probably was my favorite song on the album for sure. And then we get into Monster Mash, which I don't like this song anyway. I didn't mind their take on it, and it makes total sense considering the October when it was released. Makes total sense.
It's always shaded this record for me. It's like Monster Mash is part of this record because of, I don't know if it's the subliminal thing of the Halloween colors, that it feels, it's always felt that way to me. And so it's I've never been a huge fan of the tune either. It was another one that's a current I think it was 1962, and done by Boris Pickett and the Crypt Kickers.
Right.
I think is
when he mentioned something about Boris, I was just like, and is that Mike singing on that?
Mike is singing, and Brian does the intro.
Oh,
and
okay.
I think it's a pretty funny intro.
Okay.
And they would always, I guess, they put a green light on Mike's face, and as a matter of fact, there's a picture of him doing Monster Mash, right? These bottom photos are Mike doing Monster Mash, and so he's really kind of aping it up and
got it.
doing that thing. But I always, as I found out, this thing was released in October later on. When I was this because it was Halloween that they did Monster Mash. I think Monster Mash was in the set a lot.
Yeah, because it's probably a popular song then, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, Carl's guitar part on here is real. Bing, bing, bing. Really sparse and really top string heavy, just it's a cool little inventive part, and I think it's based on what the original was with old Boris, but anyway, neat tune.
Let's Go Trippin'. So I liked the original. I like this one even more. I think this.
Well, now when you talk about the original, are you talking about the original from Surfin' USA album?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because that was a cover.
Which is a cover, which I remember. I remember that from, yeah. But I guess, what I'm talking about is I remember liking it from the Beach Boys version of it. And then this one, I like it, like I said, I like it even more. And it's just another one where he's kind of pushing it.
Everybody, Al on the guitar and Brian, they're all just kicking ass on this one. And this is one of the things I read about Let's Go Trippin' that I knew but had forgotten is some people consider the Dick Dale version to be the first surf tune based on surf culture or the surfing lifestyle or whatever like that, so it has that little thing to it. But I know the Beach Boys must have just loved it. I mean, they loved all the Dick Dale stuff and covered a lot of it, but the performance on Surfin' USA is awesome, and this is just, Carl's killing it. Just, man, 17 maybe, if it's I think this might be one that's from that 63 show.
Yeah.
Killing it on his birthday.
Should I play?
Yeah, play a little bit of that. And I like Mike's little intro to this is cool too. Play it from the beginning.
Right now, every time we've been here, we've asked you to do one thing for us.
Remember, they've been in Sacramento quite a few times.
That one thing is to help us out and yell something. All right? And the thing we want you to yell, 3 words. Let's go trippin'.
When they do yell it,
Yell out on the count of
and then
3,
Carl
okay?
comes in on the guitar.
1, 2, 2.5, 3.
Yeah. Right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
It's just pushing it right from the beginning.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, Brian's kind of back, and Dennis is just...
Yeah, this song's awesome. Just rocking out.
They were great. They were great rock and roll band, basically a garage band that just practiced themselves into this.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that song's so cool. So it's
So that was the end of side 1.
okay.
Yep.
All right, and then Papa Oom Mow Mow.
Yes. Another cover that they love.
And I loved.
Yeah.
And this is like one where I was like, wow, I've never heard this one before. And it was like, this is
So
great.
a group called the Rivingtons did it in 1956 or something like that. It's there's a song. Have you ever heard Surfin' Bird? Bird. I'm not real fond of it, but someone pointed out that it came from Papa Oom Mow Mow. Papa Oom Mow Mow. Papa Oom Mow Mow. Papa Oom. Bird. I think it's called the Surfing Bird or something.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. I just don't have a lot
Well,
to say
there's a
about this
lot. Brian's vocal is amazing, and it's a regular cover of theirs that they would also put on the Party album the next year. I mean, they really liked it.
Yeah.
Did a studio sort of version of it. But it's, it's just a lot of energy, and it's something that they were practiced up on, and so they sound killer on it.
Yeah, totally. No, that's it was just a cool one. And then the Wanderer, same. So this one is
this is an asterisk tune, this is live instrument wise, and sounds like to me like Dennis's vocal sounds like it could be live. So Dennis comes out front to sing. What happens with the band, Adam? What do you think? Because there's drums on this.
Yeah, there's drums. And what's funny is I wrote on here, I wrote literally in my notes, is Dennis drumming and singing? No,
he comes out and just sings on a microphone. I think there's pictures of that in there too. Brian hands his bass to Al, because Al played bass on the recordings, right? And everything. Brian goes back and plays the drums.
Of course.
So pretty cool.
That is cool. That answers my question too. Because I was like, and I wrote, this is good. And it said just drumming and singing, but that makes more sense. Yeah, that makes more sense.
So that's
because did Dennis do that? Did he
He would sing harmony parts. At this time, he was left out of the singing mix and just drumming most of the time. But he is singing in spots on this album. At least I think there's a few tunes I hear him on. And why is that? Because they re-sung it in the studio, right? And he was singing on the studio stuff, but just live back then, it wasn't really feasible for a drummer to sing and play at the same time because it didn't really have a way to separate the two things so much.
Sure.
I think is a big part of it, and just, and they had enough singers up front with Brian and Carl and Al and Mike to cover all the parts, what I mean? So, but he is singing on here because they re-sung.
Right. Totally. Hawaii. I think so. And I mentioned this when we were talking about when I first heard Hawaii and how it reminds me of "Do You Want to Dance" in the beginning, and that is emphasized in this version of it because it did it to me again even more so. Where I was like, oh, it's just like. Do you want? Because especially when I first listen through, I'm usually walking my dog or something, so I don't know the name of the song. I'm just listening, and then I go back through and I, write the song names down and take my notes. But on the first, I was like, "Oh, do you want to dance?" Oh no, And
do you want to dance?
Hadn't even come out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I'm sure, man, that's a connection. Every time you say it, I understand what it is you're feeling there.
Yeah. So, but like. It was just as good as
they did. So they do an original tune, and it's in a pretty obscure album cut.
Yeah,
so cool, that's cool.
Yeah.
And there's
sounded great.
It's either Carl, but it might be Al because I've caught some early stuff with him. When he's playing rhythm guitar, adding some little bass runs. There's one little spot in here that either Carl or Al, but it's a cool little guitar run.
Yeah.
But it's, they do a good job of performing one of their tunes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Graduation Day. Cool song. No, nothing really like special going on to my ear.
Right.
But my ear is very different than your ear, so.
Well, this is the homage to the Four Freshmen. This was a song. It was Four Freshmen song,
which was cool. Which was actually cool because we've talked about the Four Freshmen so much. So that was cool to hear. To acknowledge that like in real time. Okay, this is a Four Freshmen song, and then being able to
and for me to have context. That statement on that album so early on, and I knew from 3 years old that whoever these Four Freshmen were, they meant something to Brian.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's a awesome way. And Mike does a great job of setting all that up, and I feel like shows respect to Brian and the four freshmen in his introduction of the song. But the thing that gets me more than anything is we're now playing a jazz tune, and the chords that Carl's having to play it, all of a sudden we're out of power chord land, and we're now playing hard jazz chords,
right?
And
so that difference, being able to shift into that's pretty cool.
Just to have the musicianship to be able to play those different styles. There weren't a lot of rock musicians early on whose brothers were listening to the four freshmen every day after school that knew how to play any of that shit.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
we're getting, it's like there was no big deal to them, but it's a big deal to me.
Right.
You know? And even from the very opening, it is, a major 7 chord and it's just really lush from the beginning, and it's the Beach Boys in a lounge setting almost,
Sure. Yeah.
So, and they get to appeal to their school-aged audiences here too, referencing graduation and going to school and all that setup, And they sing it really well, even if it was resung. But the part of Dennis, because he's back there without a microphone, that's live of him saying "day" before anybody else says it. Do you? Yeah. But whereas I thought that was probably a mistake for years, I guess it was a shtick that they would do all the time, as Dennis would by himself at the last of the song sing the note by himself, and they'd act like it was a mistake.
Got it.
The whole band had come in.
Oh, okay. A whole little deal, a whole little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I Get Around.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah,
they're current number one that year.
What everyone goes crazy for, when this one comes on. So, here's this
your
number 2,
other,
my number 2. Great live performance. That's what I wrote down.
Well, the music is just what it is. Again, is it's part of the original track from the All Summer Long album, or just the single. Mm-hmm. It's the original track. They stripped a few instruments back from it, though, to make it, maybe not seem so obvious, but I did not know this for years. And there's just things about it now that make it so obvious when I listen to it. It's like, oh God, I wonder how I even thought that. Even the hand claps from the original. Yeah. And, I don't know if you can hear the harpsichord on there, but I think you can in some spots. So there's it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Anything else besides that?
And to be honest with you, it was so new, and I'm wondering if they had worked it into the live show very much. But it's a really complicated tune. I Get Around. It's a hard, and so
I remember when you broke it down, you kind of showed that.
Yeah, and so let's see. Yeah, the one thing that's curious about it being the studio track, the guitar solo is missing in the middle. And whether they did that to make it look like this wasn't the studio track or not.
Right, intentional, sure.
But there's just they just sing wah, wah, ooh, wah, wah, ooh over the chords. There's no guitar solo going on, so.
And then the last song, Johnny Be Good, which was just amazing, which is so cool to hear them do that. And that's live.
This is one
live.
that is rumored to be full on live, and it's Brian and Mike singing the lead together in unison. It's not a harmony vocal, but them kind of, just toughing it out together. It's a really unique vocal for the Beach Boys,
Yeah.
And but they're just, and Carl counts it in. Carl counts. If you hear counts on these things, most of the time it's Carl because he was the leader of the live band at 17.
Yeah.
And but they just, you talk about, are they all just on maximum? Brian the bass, Dennis the drums, and then
crush it.
Al. There's a few spots on here where I can really hear Al's rhythm guitar playing too, and where he's just power chording away, just it's just punk rock, man.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. It has that energy and that drive that makes it feel, like you said, that Dennis is, because that push is coming from Dennis, is what you're saying, right?
A lot of it, yeah.
You know,
they're all excited,
and that makes sense.
Naturally pushing things forward.
Totally.
I love that this is also. I mean, how many times did the Beach Boys pay homage to Chuck Berry in the early part of their career?
Yeah,
it's just. Really, that's one of my favorite things on the album. And that being said, as we close, this is not a real musically inspiring Beach Boys album for me.
Yeah, but honestly, we ended up talking a lot more about it than I.
That's why I thought it might be a good idea. Because I remember when
you had originally said maybe we do the Beach Boys or the Beach Boys concert album and then the Christmas album as one episode, and I was like, man, I think we're gonna end up being, and you're like, yeah, you're probably right. We're gonna be able to talk about more of this than we realize, which usually happens with these things. But it was that was a shocker for me, for you to say that kind of how they pieced it together in the way that they almost Frankensteinish, if we're going to go with the October theme,
Yeah, but please remember, what a big Kiss fan I am, actually, too. Their first big live album, Kiss Alive, from 1975, same thing.
Same deal.
Same, and it was a huge success, and there weren't too many live albums that didn't have that sort of treatment.
And it makes sense. It makes total sense.
Because you're trying to make a product that people will listen to repeatedly.
That you can hear, and, there's got a level of quality.
Do you really think anybody was thinking about the honesty of whether or not it was really a live show back then or not? Or was Brian thinking, how can I give these people a really great souvenir?
Yeah.
Because it was up to Brian and Chuck Britz at Western to get these tapes back and say, okay, now how do we make this into product?
Well, and I wonder just how many people who might not be I guess that into the Beach Boys to know that there's probably a lot of people that love this album that still don't know that.
Oh. Of course.
So, I guess at the end of the day, who cares? Really.
Right. Hey, at their best, this is what they sounded like, probably live.
Yeah. So, I guess with that, we'll wrap it. We'll call it for this episode. We have the Christmas album coming up next, which I'm not the biggest fan of Christmas music, so we'll see how that one goes, but I'm sure we'll have some good discussions about that. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just thinking of one last closing thought, that the Tammy show from 1964 that was done in Santa Monica, I think was done in October. So right when this album came out, they did that performance, which I consider, if people will go out and look at the Beach Boys Tammy footage from 1964, they do 4 tunes.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the epitome of their early thing. This is them. But that is truly live on the Tammy footage.
Sure, right.
That is no.
Well, and that's the imagery.
No
that's the imagery I have when I'm listening to this. That's like how I imagine it in my head, is all those shots from.
But other people, if they haven't still sought out the TAMI, those are all capitalized. Just look up the Beach Boys and Tammy footage.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so with that, we'll call it, and thank you as always for listening. We will see you in the next episode for the Christmas album.
Yes.
Take care.